Some of you have perhaps seen this picture before. It's been a meme for, I think, over a decade at this point. This one goes back pretty far. Sometimes the meme is used to address very serious topics, like if you're into that world, things like politics, masculinity, or whatever. Other times, it's just used to present more of a lighthearted dilemma, not something that you need to think real hard about. Either way, it's a picture that is supposed to represent a choice, and someone already shouted it out. The actual scene that this screenshot comes from is a movie that was released in the 90s called The Matrix. I think it's rated R, so I'm not endorsing it or saying you should see it, I just want to clarify. But in this scene, there's a line that kind of serves as a good intro to our passages this morning. You see, without getting into all the details, the guy on the left of the screen, his name is Morpheus. And he is offering the guy on the right, whose name is Neo, he's offering him an opportunity. An opportunity to either, this is in the movie, take the red pill and wake up, in quotation marks. Kind of wake up to a brand new reality and discover a bunch of stuff that Neo's never seen before. Or he can take the blue pill and just go back to his ordinary life. Obviously, Neo has questions about this new reality. He naturally wants to understand what it is that he's signing up for. And Morpheus tries his best to explain this new world to him, but eventually Morpheus gets to this point where he says something that he can't explain it anymore, and the direct line he says is, unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. You have to see it for yourself. In other words, I can do my best to try to describe it, but if you really want to understand, you just have to try for yourself. And again, I really just want to use this line and this idea to get into our passage this morning. I think there's a lot of things in life that can kind of fall under this category of, if you really want to understand, you need to just experience it for yourself. I think certain foods belong in this category. I could do my best to describe amazing food to you, but at some point, if you really want to understand, you just have to try the food. I think music belongs in this category. I can do my best to try to describe an amazing song or an artist, a song that's really artistic and resonates emotionally. But if you really want to understand, then you just have to hear the song. And there's so many things in life, from really good things like love and friendship to bad things like heartbreak and loss, where it's not until you experience the thing that then you understand it at a new level. And I would venture to say that Christianity and following Jesus is very similar. When it comes to following Jesus, we can be a part of a church, we can grow up in a Christian family, but unless we are following him ourselves, there may be things that we miss or things that we fail to understand. We're just going to be, we may end up just listening to everyone else talk about their experience rather than having our own. And that's why throughout the series, we're basically going to see throughout the book of Mark, how Mark kind of challenges us as readers to consider the question, not just, hey, what do I think about Jesus, or what does the Bible say about Jesus? Those are important. But how am I following him? How am I experiencing him for myself? And one of the ways that Mark does this in his gospel is he challenges us to think about this by showing us how other people respond to Jesus. And we're supposed to consider, hey, what did they get right? What did they get wrong? And what can we learn from their example? He actually includes a story like this in his opening chapter. Here's the first passage we want to look at. Mark chapter 1, this is verse 21. It says, they went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, Jesus went into the synagogue and began to teach. The people were amazed at his teaching because he taught them as one who had authority, not as their teachers of the law. Just then, a man in their synagogue who was possessed by an impure spirit cried out, "What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are." That's important. Take note of it. "I know who you are, the Holy One of God." "And be quiet," said Jesus sternly. "Come out of him." The impure spirit shook the man violently and came out of him with a shriek. And the people were all so amazed that they asked each other, "What is this? What is this? A new teaching and with authority? He even gives orders to impure spirits and they obey him." News about him spread quickly over the whole region of Galilee. I just want us to notice from the beginning of Mark's story, the contrast between what the people ask in verse 27. What is this? Or another way to say that is, who is this? And what the demon-possessed man says in verse 24. I know who you are, the Holy One of God. This contrast actually shows up several times in Mark's gospel, where the spiritual realm seems to recognize Jesus right away, while humans are often left confused and uncertain. And many scholars believe that this kind of contrast is intentional. Mark is actually trying to highlight how easy it is to misunderstand Jesus when we judge him by just the standards of this world. Church tradition tells us that Mark was not one of the 12 disciples that followed Jesus. Rather, Mark was a disciple of Peter. So if you're familiar, Jesus had his 12. Peter was kind of his right-hand man. And Peter told Mark the stories, and then Mark compiled them into the narrative that we now have. It's estimated that Mark was written right around the 60s AD, so turn of the century, 0 AD, right around the 60s AD. And even though Mark writes about how easy it is for people to misunderstand Jesus, Mark is very honest about who he believes Jesus to be. Here is the very opening line from Mark's book. Mark chapter 1, verse 1 says, "The beginning of the good news about Jesus the Messiah, the Son of God." Now, depending on your Bible translation, Jesus will either be called the Messiah or Jesus Christ. It's either Jesus Messiah or Jesus Christ. That's just a difference of translation philosophy. Christ is the Greek form of the Hebrew word Messiah. Both words basically mean the anointed one. So it's the same thing. And the point is that Jesus is God's anointed king, hence our series title, Christ the King. Now, already calling Jesus the king was a dangerous thing to say, but Mark doesn't stop there. He also calls Jesus the Son of God. That is a phrase that we all take for granted because we're just Christians and we believe Jesus is the Son of God. That kind of comes with the package of growing up Christian. But if you were in the first century, there was already someone who held the position of king and was thought of as the Son of God. It was this guy, Caesar Augustus. He was the emperor of Rome when Jesus was a kid. And if you could read Latin, you would see that the inscription on that coin says Caesar Augustus, son of the divine, which is another way of saying son of the god or son of the gods. And in the tablet inscription on the right, Emperor Augustus is referred to as a savior sent from God, whose birth marks good news for the whole world. And that inscription comes from the time of Jesus's birth, which means at the time of Mark writing, everyone in the empire knew there was a story about a savior who was the so-called Son of God and whose birth was good news because that's what the emperor said about himself. And it's in that environment where Mark pens the phrase, the beginning of the good news about Jesus, the King, the Son of God. In other words, Mark wants to start his story by making himself abundantly clear. Hey, I know what the emperor says. I know what the cultural narrative is, but I'm telling you, there is another king who is on the throne. There is someone who is more powerful. There is someone else who is really in control of our world. If I were to pastorally apply this idea to our lives, I would simply say that Jesus is more powerful than whatever we are facing. The insecurity, the fear, the anxiety that has just kind of always been there, and it feels like it will never go away, Jesus is more powerful than those things. The rejection or the trauma that feels like it's defined us, Jesus is actually able to bring healing and hope to that place. The diagnosis, the loss of a relationship, the fear that we will never be able to change or that our family will never be okay, all of those things, they're real, and I don't mean to be dismissive about them. But when we compare that power to the one who rose from the dead, we realize that Jesus is actually the one who holds all the power. And that's part of Mark's message here, is that, hey, whatever we think of as the most powerful force in the universe, there is a king who is so much more powerful and capable than we could ever imagine. And he uses that power very differently than the way the rest of the world uses power. Remember, Mark is writing around the year 65 AD, which means the king of Rome at the time wasn't actually Augustus. It was this guy named Nero. You may learn about him in a history class for like 10 minutes. He's a somewhat popular Roman emperor, but not that much. If he is popular, it's mostly for bad reasons. He inherited the throne when he was 16 years old, literally became in charge of an empire. And he showed a lot of potential when he was young, but as he got older, most historians describe him as being paranoid about keeping his power. He became extremely violent, and he ordered the murder of several people who he was close to, including his mom. He was famous for overtaxing the people to fund his extravagant lifestyle, and he famously persecuted Christians and tortured them in really disgusting ways to try to shift blame off himself for a fire that occurred in Rome. Now, Nero's not mentioned in Mark's gospel because Mark's audience would have already knew who Nero was and what he was like. However, Mark does present Jesus as a king. So you can kind of see a contrast between the kind of king that Jesus is and the kind of king that this world is used to. Here is one quick example from later on in the chapter. This is chapter 1, verse 32. It says, that evening, after sunset, the people brought to Jesus all the sick and demon-possessed. The whole town gathered at the door, and Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak because, again, they knew who he was. It's a theme throughout Mark. Demons just tend to recognize him. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went to a solitary place where he prayed. Simon and his companions, these are Jesus' disciples, they went looking for him. And when they found him, they exclaimed, everyone is looking for you. And Jesus replied, let us go somewhere else to the nearby villages so I can preach there also. That is why I have come. Now, multiple sources tell us that Nero, remember the other emperor, the other king, son of God, one of the things that he was famous for was he would host these performances where people were expected to show up and to attend and to applaud for him at the end of his performance. Contrast that style of being a king with Jesus in this scene. Very early in the morning, after he had just been healing people and casting out demons all night, Jesus wakes up, goes off by himself to pray, and he is not at all concerned with the crowd. When the disciples finally find him, they state the obvious. Jesus, you are performing miracles, so everyone is looking for you. And if I just kind of use my imagination, I have to wonder how the disciples thought about this opportunity. Remember, this is still them being newer to Jesus and his movement and his ministry. They see Jesus, and to them, they are perceiving, Jesus, you are kind of a trending topic right now. You are the person everyone is talking about and everyone is looking for. This is your moment for us to capitalize. Today, the equivalent is kind of like when someone goes viral and then they do a podcast tour for 2 weeks because that's what everyone is talking about. The disciples seem to see Jesus' popularity as an opportunity to take advantage of. And in our cultural moment, people do the exact same thing. As a society, we value popularity, platforms, influence, followers, all of it. And I don't mean to infer that those things are bad in and of themselves, not at all. But chasing popularity just for popularity's sake doesn't seem like the kind of opportunity that Jesus was interested in. Notice verse 37, Jesus, everyone is looking for you. Isn't this what kings do? They try to gain more followers, they try to get more attention, they try to get more applause. Verse 38, let's go somewhere else. Maybe to a nearby village or something so I can preach there also. That's why I've come to earth. In other words, for Jesus, purpose seemed to matter more than popularity. And again, I want to be clear here. I'm not anti-influencer, anti-having a lot of followers. That stuff is not inherently wrong. All I'm saying is that one of Jesus's values is that our purpose should matter more than just being popular. Rather than living for attention or approval, following Jesus gives us something greater to focus on. Some of us subconsciously ask ourselves pretty often, what are they going to think of me? What do they think of me? What are they saying about me? And this morning, I just want to propose that a better question might be, is this decision coming from a place of purpose or just my attempt at chasing popularity? Because Jesus shows us a life that cares more about purpose. He is a different kind of king. And the implication is that we are obviously supposed to follow his lead. That's what Mark wants us to catch throughout his book, and he emphasizes it right here in the very beginning in chapter 1. This will be the last passage that we look at, and then we'll close. If Marinelle can come jump on the keys. Notice that not only is Jesus a different kind of king, but he calls people to be a part of what he's doing. Here's our last passage from the morning, chapter 1, verse 16. As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and his brother Andrew casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. "Come, follow me," Jesus said, "and I will send you out to fish for people." And then notice verse 18. At once, they left their nets. They left their nets and followed him. When he had gone a little further, he saw James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John in a boat preparing their nets. Without delay, he called them, and they did the same thing. They left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired men, and they followed Jesus. It's kind of easy to miss in this moment, but these fishermen actually make life-changing decisions. In this day and age, when you signed up to follow a Jewish rabbi like Jesus, this was not like a part-time thing. This was not something that they just showed up to his services on Sundays and listened to his teaching and then moved on. No, following a rabbi basically meant you were devoting your entire life to this person. You traveled with them, you worked with them, you literally followed them around day to day in order to become like them. And one of the contrasts that Mark highlights throughout his book is the contrast between the disciples who follow Jesus and then the crowds who are just observing from a distance. And the point is really simple. Some things can't be fully explained. You can only understand them through experience. That if we really actually want to understand who Jesus is and what he's like, then we can't just observe him from a distance, but we actually may need to leave some things or some people behind and trust him enough, trust Jesus enough to follow him wherever he leads. And that's how we wanted to start this series as we get into the book of Mark over the coming weeks. It's really with one question that I'm going to try to frame in two different ways. Here they are. Number one, is there anything God is asking me to walk away from? Number two, is there anything God is asking me to start or to walk towards? For some of us, the invitation of Jesus right now, if Jesus were to kind of have that follow me moment with us, for some of us, the invitation of Jesus is actually to walk away from some people, from some things, from some environments that we know are holding us back. We're attached to them. They give us a sense of security and belonging and identity, but we just know, not good for me. For others of us, the call of Jesus is to actually follow through with some ideas that we've had in the past. It's to step into something new. It's to pick up that habit of Bible reading. It's to start volunteering. It's to start the club, whatever it is. For some of us, we've just never even made a personal decision to actually commit our lives to Jesus. Our family's Christian, we've kind of embraced the ideas as we've grown up, but we've never had the moment where we decided for ourselves, you know what? I am committing to him. And whatever the next step is for you, if you can kind of imagine yourself as some disciples on a boat, and there's rumors of a king, there's rumors of a different kind of king who isn't concerned with popularity, but actually has a purpose, actually has a mission that he's inviting people to be a part of, I just have to wonder, what would his invitation sound like to us today? When he says, follow me, what are the things that we may need to walk away from? What are the things that we may need to start? And whatever that is, I'm going to end our time right now by praying. And when we dismiss leaders, if you don't have an assignment, at the end, I'll have you come up here and we'll have some leaders who will be available to pray and to talk afterwards. But I just want to encourage us, whatever the thing is for us, particularly if we've never made a decision to actually follow Jesus for ourselves. So much of, I think, what Mark wants us to capture is, hey, I can't really describe it to you fully. You just have to experience it for yourself. And if you try, you might be surprised at what you'll find.